Welcome to Coffee with Samso. Today we are going to explore something that the small cap industry lacks, and that is the understanding of the people who drive these companies. These are the people who are telling you to invest in their stories. With 3 decades in the industry and the last 5 years on the Samso platform, I feel like there is a gap, a disconnect between what is reality and what's perceived understanding of these guys. They don't control the weather, they don't control the commodity prices nor the sentiment. What they do control is they are the champion of the course, they manage the risk, and they drive the story. Most importantly, these guys are constantly in the public eye and open to scrutiny, and they are the brunt of all the criticisms. Hence, in our Samso style, we try and bring to you guys, the audience, to try and narrow this gap and share with you the insights, the dots that connect the minds of these individuals, and when they tell you the stories of where potentially you could put your hard-earned cash to. So today we're starting off a new look to our path forward, our followers, and we bring to you the first Coffee with Samso insights. So let's sit back and enjoy as we dive into these individuals to understand what makes them tick. In today's topic, we are talking to a man who is no stranger for the Samso platform. He has always been straightforward with his thoughts and his sharing of all things mineral exploration, and is currently the executive chair of Miramar Resources with the ASX code M2R. And Alan Kelly, thanks for coming by and being victim number 1.
Thanks. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing at all.
We'll soon find out. So here we are at the UWA Club in Crawley on the University of Western Australia campus. Look, today's topic is an insight into a mineral explorationist, a practical, eternal optimist. Is that a good topic for people like us?
I totally agree. You have to be an optimist in exploration.
Yeah, so let me just give you a brief bio of Alan. Bachelor of Science with Honours in Applied Geology from Curtin University. Has over 30 years experience in mineral exploration and mineral project development and production. Worked in Alaska, Canada and Australia. Anything I missed out?
Basically mainly Australia and North America, that's right, yep.
Been involved with Western Mining, WNC Corporation, Evoca Resources Limited, Rivers Gold, Eloy Resources, Dore Minerals, and in 2009 it was the discovery of the Andy Well project and the development of that. One of the few stories that went from discovery to mine production in 3.5 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is rare in itself.
Yep.
On top of the fact that you actually found an economic deposit. So.
Yep.
2014 was awarded the Association of Mining and Exploration Companies AMEC Prospector Award, along with Dore's co-founder Mr. Heath Halliwell, for the discovery of the Wilbur Lode and Andy Well gold deposits.
Yep.
Member of AAG, and interestingly, Institute of Brewing and Distilling.
Yep.
So kind of a left field there, but let's move forward. And Miramar was listed 21st of October 2020.
That's right,
Yep.
Yeah, we were the first IPO after COVID, basically.
Yep. So, Alan, look, in summary, the market for us, the small end of the market, is back to the good old times where it's 80% hard slog, 10% a glimmer of hope, 5% of it looking good, and 5% of good times. Good summary?
I think you're being a bit over-optimistic on some of the good stuff.
So let's start the conversation with why and how you decided to begin your journey.
Ah, wow, okay. So I born in Perth, but I grew up in Albany. You know, fantastic place to grow up as a kid, you know, really outdoorsy, did a lot of sort of outdoor stuff like scouts and camping and fishing, and I was in surf club and stuff as well. So really always sort of headed towards science at school, so maths and science, but also the sort of outdoorsy side of things as well. And I didn't really know much about geology at all. It was more chemistry sort of basis back then. I actually, my first choice is I wanted to go in the army. I wanted to go in the army, and there's a whole story there. But basically I tried to get into ADFA when it first started, to do a degree there and get in the army. I didn't get in. So then I applied for university. I actually applied for UWA chemistry at the time. I had School of Mines second on my sort of preferences to do, I think it was metallurgy at the time. And I got offered both, and I ended up deciding to come to UWA because I didn't really know much about Kalgoorlie. So I started off in chemistry here at UWA. In first year science back then, you had to choose 4 units, and you had a book that said if you want to do chemistry, basically you need to do this in first year, this in second year, this in third year. So basically chemistry, you had to do chemistry, maths, physics and something else. And when I went and saw the course advisor, he said, oh, why don't you do something different, something you haven't done before? What about geology? And I went, oh, okay, well, that sounds pretty interesting. So, you know, I started off doing geology, and I liked that more than the chemistry. Being outside, we had field trips, you know, went out to up to near Bakers Hill somewhere, stopped at the pub and got beers on the way back.
The quarry.
Yeah, the quarry, I thought it was pretty good, up at Boyer Quarry and Bakers Hill and that. So, so liked geology, so then pursued geology in second year, but kept a bit of chemistry. I then actually got accepted into the army. So I went off to the army. Unfortunately, I got injured when I was in the army. So I came back to uni, and then I basically followed that geology and chemistry path. So I liked the geology, but I also still had a lot of interest in chemistry. So by the time I got to third year at Curtin, I was doing geology and chemistry, sort of made my own degree course. And then I got offered I did a bit of vacation work. I worked at Darlow and up around Yalgoo during my vacations. But then at the end of third year, I got offered an honours project at Forrestania with a Finnish company called Outokumpu, who I knew nothing about. And they wanted someone to look at sort of regolith and nickel geochemistry and stuff. And then there was a summer job that came with that. So I went out to Forrestania and worked with some great people like Kevin Frost, you know, obviously discovered Julimar with Morgan, Bill Hammond later on. But yeah, that's my interest in geochemistry really sort of took off. So I did an honours degree with CSIRO, between Outokumpu and CSIRO in Curtin, with people like Ravi Anand and Charles Butt and Ray Smith. So really in the thick of like regolith geochemistry, and really enjoyed it. You know, got to do mapping and you know, interpreting regolith and geochem from RAB drilling and all this sort of stuff. And then so towards the end of the honours year, I came in one day and there was a notice on the honours room door that Western Mining were having interviews the next day. And I thought, oh, you know, Western Mining, a big company, they only hire like first class honours, like don't have much of a chance with them. But I thought, oh, I'll put my name down and just come in for like a practice interview, see how I go. So I think there was like 8 of us in the honours class, people like Matt Ducey, who's running IGO, Alan Neeshaw, who discovered Hemi, a few other people. So I came in, went into the interview. I think I was probably like last or second last person to do the interview, and other guys had been coming out and didn't seem like they were done very well. And I went in and there was a person, Megan Clark, who's sort of pretty well known. She was the first female underground mine geo, Western Mining. She went on to run CSIRO, head up the space agency. Okay. She was doing the interviews. She was the chief geologist for Western Mining, or chief geoscientist for Western Mining at the time. So she said, oh, well, tell us about your honours project. And I said, oh, you know, looking at nickel geochemistry and regolith mapping and stratigraphy and sort of telling about my project. And about 10 minutes in, she goes, "Oh, well, I don't think I need to hear anymore." And I thought, okay, well, I'll get ready to walk out the door. She goes, "I think we can offer you a job." Oh, all right, okay. And just so happened that there were 3 geochemists who were moving spots. So these 3 spots had opened up. And back then in Western Mining, basically every exploration team, she described it as like the perfect fishing trip. You had a few geos, you had a geochemist, and you had a geophysicist, and a more sort of technical structural geologist in each team.
Yeah.
And people used to sort of move around every few years, and it just so happened that there were a couple of spots that opened up in these teams. There was a spot at Hill 50 at Mount Magnet. There was a spot in the northeastern goldfields in the nickel team there, and there was a spot in the Murchison Pilbara team. So she said, "I think, you know, we should set you up for the meeting with the chief geochemist, a guy called Richard Carver." Yeah, so I met up with him and showed him what I was working on my project, and he said, "Oh, that's really good." I ended up choosing the Murchison Pilbara team. They were based in Belmont, so I didn't even have to move house.
Yeah.
And started working on all multi-commodity projects. So a lot of stuff in the Murchison, like just typical goldfields projects. But Onslow was one of the projects I worked on, which is the same project we've got now. And then some other interesting stuff. You know, we started looking for a little bit of nickel in the Bangor, not quite where we are now, but sort of up that neck of the woods. So the great thing about being a geochemist is that you got to work on a number of different projects with the project geos, where the project geo had their own project, but the geophysicist and the geochemist got to work on all different projects. So you got to see different commodities and different deposits. And then the other thing that Western Mining was really good at is that every year or every 18 months or so, all the geochemists would get together for a sort of a meeting, and all the geophysicists would get together for a meeting, and you would get to see what other people were working on. And I think at the height of when I was at Western Mining, we had something like 13 or 14, 15 geochemists. You know, there was one in every operation.
Yep.
You know, Norseman, St Ives, Kambalda, Leinster, whatever. And then there were all the exploration teams around the world. So there was, you know, several in Australia, plus there was people in South America and Africa and everywhere. So just getting that exposure to different projects, but also then different commodities and deposit types and different stuff that other people were working on, it was a great experience, you know. And I had 7 years of that at Western Mining.
Do you think that still exists in the bigger companies?
No, I've seen. Well, not that I'm aware of. Like, you know, I left Western Mining and never went back to a big company again. I think IGO, when Chris Bonwick started that, he was trying to do a sort of similar thing. I don't know how successful that was. Yeah. And I can't talk about, you know, like the big gold companies like Northern Star and that. But Western Mining was just unique. The other thing that was unique about Western Mining was that all the geologists or the geoscientists were employed by the exploration division, and then they got seconded out to the mines. So your career development and that was managed in a central sort of pool, but then you went to Kambalda Nickel for maybe 3 years, and then you went to, you know, Hill 50 Gold for a few years, and then you maybe went to XDiv and worked in gold exploration in Canada for a few years, and so but you were still in that same pool. Yep. And you sort of work your way through their career path. Yep. And have all those great experiences. Okay. And the other thing that was fantastic, I don't know if I've talked about it before, but we used to have a geology conference every year in Kalgoorlie, and they would fly most of the geos in, and they'd have 2 or 3 days of presentations and stuff. Yep. And so people would talk about things that they're working on at their mine site or their exploration project, and you got to ask questions. And I remember distinctly I was working in Canada on a project called Melodine, which is a greenstone gold project. There was gold hosted in banded iron formation and stuff. And, you know, going to the geology conference in Kalgoorlie and hearing the guys from Hill 50 talking about exploration and stuff that they're doing at Hill 50 and banded iron formation, and here I am in Canada working on a project and being able to talk to those guys and go, oh, what do you reckon about this? You know, I don't know where you get that anymore. I don't see that anywhere.
Okay, I mean, that kind of development, I think it's, in my opinion, I mean, I might be wrong with this, I think it's rare now, especially for the younger guys coming through. And, you know, looking at what you've achieved in your early decision to get in the industry, what do you think is a trait that has allowed you to keep on this path? You know, because it's a hard industry, right, as we all know.
Yeah.
What's that trait, do you think, that and maybe these guys out there could try and figure that out, if they have it or not?
I'll say a couple of things. So exploration is like detective work. Okay, exploration is like detective work. It's different, no disrespect to people working on mine sites and things, but exploration, you need to have a different mind frame to production. And I got really frustrated with production. Like, you know, to be honest, got a bit bored with it, you know, when I was running a gold mine. Exploration, and I've worked like FIFO on a mine site as well. You know, FIFO, you get up, you fly to the mine, you work your 12-hour day or whatever, you work your roster, and then you go home and you switch off. Exploration's never been like that for me. You know, like, you're always asking questions, you're always trying to find out that missing piece of information that's going to give you that insight to what you're trying to do, and no one's going to give that to you on a plate. You have to find it out. That's what I say. It's like detective work. So you've got to be constantly curious and asking questions and trying to work out why, and trying to work out why not as well. You need to be an optimist. You've got to think that the next thing is just around the corner, but you also need to be a realist as well. That if you look around the corner and it's not there, you've got to also recognise that it's probably not there and move on. There's an opportunity cost. One of the things I've never been afraid to do is say when I don't know something, admit when I don't know something. You know, like a lot of times that's seen as a fault. Like, you go, you know, if you go give a presentation to a broker or something and they're asking a question, and you don't know, but you just make up something to keep them happy. Well, I'd never do that. I always say, look, I don't know, I'll find out for you. And I think that's a key thing as an explorationist. You need to know what you don't know, and you need to know what you need to find out. Right? You need to put those bits of the puzzle together to get you to where your end point is. So you've got to be, I think, constantly curious, constantly asking questions, and admit when you don't know stuff. That's what I'd say. And be optimistic.
Out of that four, interestingly, because that's kind of the trait that I tell people, is what do you think is the core? Is it the fact that you are always asking questions, or that optimist part? Because there's certain things that exploration people have to always, is it there, is it not, right?
Yeah, I think they're equally important. Maybe the optimism part maybe sort of nudges in by a head, you know, like, I've talked about this before with people, and I can't remember whether we talked about it, but I say that there's so many non-technical things that can get in the way of a discovery, like non-technical stuff, like going out to try and find a prospect and then getting a couple of flat tyres before lunch and then deciding, oh, it's too hard. If you don't have that optimism that it's actually worth going and getting to the spot, then you probably just give up before lunch. Yeah. So, like, for example, I was up in the Bangamore a few weeks ago, getting ready for a drill program, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But we just picked up a tenement at Christmas time. I was looking for a bit of ground up in the Gascoyne. I was looking for a particular rock type, and I was trying to find whether there were any vacant bits of ground over this rock type. So we pegged this bit of ground, and then realised that there was a historic little copper showing on the other part of the ground that I didn't even sort of recognise at the time. So I thought, oh, well, and there were some historic rock chips there, but no one had done any work there for a while. So I said, right, as part of this field trip to go peg these drill holes, we'll go over and have a look at this prospect. You know, I thought it'd be like a couple of hour job to drive over there, go have a look. Well, it took us all day to drive like 200 Ks or something.
Yeah.
The last 26 Ks took us like 2 hours. You know, we couldn't get in on the track that we were supposed to. We had to leave our car and then unload a buggy and then get a buggy off and get in there. We had to cross like 2 rivers to get there, and we got there at like 3:45 in the afternoon, and we're going, geez, we need to be back at the camp by dark. And we knew that it had taken us a long time. So, you know, quickly rushed around, took a few samples, and, you know, those samples came back like, you know, 5% copper and 40% lead and 70 grams silver. But it's just like, we could have just gone, oh no, it's too hard. We can't go across this river. Oh, that's not bother. Let's come back another time. You gotta have a bit of that.
Because you have a story about Andy Well too, when you got the project. Because I remember working on that project for another company, and then somehow or other they vended it out because they went
Dominion?
on. This was probably ABM Resources.
Oh,
or,
yeah.
So they were, you know, I'll let you tell the story, but that's a classic example of what they didn't do, which benefited you, right?
That's right. Yeah, so the quickly sort of recap. So Scott Wilson had pegged the tenement. He'd done a deal with Dominion. So Dominion were working it, and he was sort of getting carried along in the JV. Yeah. Dominion sold to Western Mining. We went out and did some drilling. At the time, Western Mining had this like huge target threshold. You know, it was 1 million ounces, then became 3 million ounces and stuff. Western Mining decided, okay, it's not Western Mining size. So then they sold it to a company which was ABM. Yep. I think it was Tantalum Australia anyway.
Yep, that's right.
So they did a little bit of work, but they had drilled, they started off drilling an RC program, which would have gone right over the top of the deposit. But they drilled 2 holes and then they got rained out and they pulled the rig out. And if they drilled their 3rd hole on that section, they would have got, I don't know, was it 3 metres at 17 grams or something? And then the rest will be in history, right? So yeah, it's there's so many instances of that sort of serendipity happening, you know, like you've got to go, okay, if this is the target and I like the target because of X, Y and Z, I need to test it. I really hate unfinished business. I hate leaving a target untested. If I haven't worked out whether X, Y and Z exists, I can't let it go. And that, my wife probably say that's a bad trait that I have, but I hate unfinished business, right? I need to find out why that was. Right? Yeah. And if it's no good, then that's fine. I can sleep easy. But if I just leave that thing out there and haven't tested it, I haven't tested the reason that I liked it in the first place, well, I can't sleep.
Because that's a good point, because that happens all the time, and you know, if we sat down here and wrote a list, we will never stop in terms of those targets that a bit like your ABM story or Tantalum Australia. But you know, like best series will always be compromised due to, you know, lack of funding, falling commodity prices, sentiment, a black swan event like COVID,
wrong management,
or just,
you make a discovery somewhere else.
Or
that happens too.
Yeah, or a lack of success at that point in time, right?
Or, like I say, say for example, you know, we had a number of projects in Dore. We made a discovery in Andy Well. Projects like Sidewell, which is Great Boulder, went down the pecking order, right? So that happens too. You've only got so many arms and legs. So you go, we're going to focus on this, and then you have these sort of second tier projects where you go, oh, what do we do with that now? Right. And there's a lot of that about too.
So how do you manage that in the past and, you know, now in your current project, right? Because as you say, there's so many factors involved. And you pick them up not because you like most pastures, because obviously you have some concept, some theory that this could work. I mean, this is a dilemma for every legitimate mineral explorer out there, right?
So my view in exploration, and it's funny, you briefly said that I had, got brewing qualification as well. I ran a pub and a restaurant for a while as well. And there's a bit of some similarities there where, I learnt when I ran the pub and the restaurant, I learnt about menu planning, right? And they talk about, you know, when you have a restaurant, they break up the items on the menu based on how much they sell and how much profit you make. Okay. And you have a little matrix and you go, these are the ones that I sell heaps of and I make a lot of money on them. We call them stars or whatever, right? And then you have ones that you sell a lot of but you don't make much money on, and you have ones that you sell, you know, a few but you make heaps of money on when you sell them, and then you have the ones that you don't sell much of and you don't make much money, so you don't really want them, right? So with exploration, it's more like it's the risk reward thing. So you want projects, you know, ideally you want projects that are low risk but high reward. But, you know, they're pretty few far in between, right? You need to basically go drill an ore body to get that. So I always reckon you've got to have a mixture of sort of low to moderate risk projects, but can make you money, some money, and then you want to have some high risk, high reward stuff, right? So and that's how I started Doré, and probably not so much Doré. That's how I started Rivers Gold. That's how I started Miramar. So in the case of Miramar, our sort of low to moderate risk but good reward are the Gidgee, you know, projects near Kalgoorlie. Geology is well understood. You're looking for gold. Yep. You've got infrastructure all around you, so the risk is pretty low. Yep. But you know, realistically, if you found 100,000 ounces, 250,000 ounces, 500,000 ounces, it'd be a good result. Correct. So it's sort of like a moderate reward. So then the other side is your high risk, high reward stuff. Your IOCG project or your Norilsk style nickel project, where there's a much higher risk just because these things are hard to find. Yeah. But if you find it, it's huge. Yeah, it's billions and billions of dollars. So that's how I've always sort of looked at. You got to have a bit of your bread and butter sort of stuff that you can work on all the time, and then some like sex appeal. You know, the real company maker stuff. You know, that's how I've always sort of viewed life. And you know, since we listed in 2020, all we've done is dropped projects. We've still got the same projects. We've picked up a few little tenements here and there, like next door to things, but we've basically kept the same projects. Like our main project is still Gidgee, and we've still got Whale Shark and Bangamore. Glandor sort of is there, but we haven't sort of done much work on that recently. But it's a bit frustrating when you pick these good projects and you pick them for a reason, and then over the last couple of years, probably not the last 12 months, but definitely the 2 years before that, you just see all these companies getting awarded for doing deals. Oh, we're buying this lithium project in Quebec and the share price screams up. Or we're buying this rare earth project in the Gascoyne and things share. It's like, I say to my wife and other people, but do you remember there was a TV show called My Restaurant Rules?
Yes.
It was before My Kitchen Rules, it was My Restaurant Rules. And the whole concept of the thing was that, you know, there was all these couples and they were starting these restaurants. And so the whole show focused on them getting the restaurant open. But that's not the main game. The main game is running the restaurant. It's like the pregnancy, getting pregnant for 9 months, you know, and then having a kid.
Well,
it's
18,
like
20 years.
people rewarding people for doing these deals, but not for actually then executing good exploration. And that's really frustrating. We haven't done any deals because we've gone, well, these projects are great projects and we still haven't really tested the project yet. So good or bad, but that's what we've done, you know, like, and some of these projects take a while to actually come together as well. They take a while to go from zero understanding to actually get to a drill target.
And I think that's the issue in the industry. Although we call it mineral exploration, I don't think that exploration word is a commonly worked word in the sense that there isn't real exploration. There's probably a handful of companies that really do the, you know, from concept to developing, and obviously that.
Well, it's not about exploration. It's about discovery.
So yeah, but the process of discovery, right?
But that's what you're there for, to make a discovery, right? You're not there to just explore. You're there to make a discovery. So here's a funny Western mining sort of story as well. So Roy Woodall, you know, legend of the industry. He retires from Western Mining in '95, and I go to this geology conference in Kalgoorlie I was telling you about, and the new exploration head Jack Parry came in, and he gave this big sort of like welcome talk. You know, it's his first talk before all the geos and stuff, and he was talking about how exploration division should change its name, right? And he was talking about Toys R Us. When you go to Toys R Us, you know exactly what you're there for. You're there to buy toys, right? And he was sort of, you know, rhetorically saying, oh, maybe, you know, we should change our name to Discoveries R Us, you know, and we should call ourselves Discoveries R Us. And he must have said through this talk about 50 times, you know, oh, Discoveries R Us, Discoveries R Us, Discoveries R Us. Because you don't make any money from exploration. Yeah. You make money from a discovery.
Yeah.
So, no, it was funny, like, our aim of Miramar is to create shareholder value through discovery. And a lot of the time we underline the word discovery. And I remember being at a conference and a retail shareholder come up and said, oh, that's a really good motto. And I was a bit shocked. It's like, yeah, but that's what every exploration company should be telling you. They should be saying to you, we want to make money for you by making a discovery.
Yeah.
That's what you're there for.
Yeah, but that's where I think our previous discussion, I think the whole understanding of the process is marked by very short-term milestones. Right?
But if you don't know where you're going, how do you know when you're going to get there? Right? You got to be clear about why you're doing this.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're talking to the converted, and I guess, you know, in some ways, people like you, people like me, and all the other MDs and chairs, and you know, you're always being judged, and you know, I have this saying where, you know, when everyone wins, it's we, and when it's not a happening thing, it's you. Do you think? What are your thoughts on that? You know, I mean, obviously it's an unfair thought, but does those kind of criticisms dig deep for Alan Kelly?
Yep. Yeah, they do. They do. It's when you're a small, you know, micro nano cap explorer, whatever you want to call us, there's nowhere to hide, right? There's nowhere to hide as a person, but we also live and die on every drill holes. You know, you don't have the ability to go out and do a program of like 50 or 100 RC holes, try and work out what's going on, and you live and die on every drill hole. Now, you don't go out there to deliberately drill dud holes, right? I want to make that clear that everything we do is aimed at trying to make a discovery, right? So you go out there and you test an idea with a drill hole. That's why it's called drill testing, right? So when you go out there and you have all your skills and experience and you think this is a good target, and you drill it and you don't get what you want, it's disappointing. It's disappointing personally. You start to doubt yourself a bit, but it's also disappointing because you know that, you know, as a junior explorer, that's like another step down. You know, you can't hide it. You need to be honest and go, yep, we went out and drilled it, and we didn't get what we wanted. Right? You know, it's a good target, but we didn't get what we wanted. We need to understand what's going on. What's even more frustrating is that if you take our Gidgee project, for instance, it's technically challenging because there's a paleo channel. So we went out and drilled underneath a really good target at Blackfriars earlier in the year with an RC hole, but the RC hole failed before it got to the target depth because of the paleo channel. Now that, you know, you don't have the money to just go, oh, I'll just do like 3 more holes, but you have to come out and go, okay, we drilled this hole, but the hole was ineffective. It wasn't we didn't test the target. So it's still, you know, talking about the unfinished business. It's still unfinished business, but trying to explain that to someone, they don't really get that technical thing about why the hole failed. You know,
is that frustrating for you? Because I mean, when you say that to me, I remember reading an announcement too, and I thought, oh, geez, these guys might be onto something. And then, but then, because I wasn't following you, you know, thoroughly, you know, you look back, well, they haven't tested yet.
Yeah.
But again, you know, like, it must be really frustrating from your level. But
well, yeah. And the thing is, we need to go back there now and have another crack with a different technique. We go, okay, we've had a problem at Gidgee where probably about 40% of our RC holes have failed because of the paleo channel. And for people that don't understand, paleo channel is basically like an ancient riverbed that has come in and sort of cut through the older rocks. And those paleo channels normally have clay, real sticky clay up the top, but then they have sand, and it's just like beach sand, running beach sand. And then you get a bit of gravel down the bottom, and then you go into the rock that you actually want to get to. So they're quite challenging to drill. And what happens is, typically with RC, because RC uses a lot of air, like high pressure air, that running beach sandy sort of stuff that's in that channel can blow out, and then it falls down the hole and it gets clogged up in the rods and stuff, and it just becomes an absolute nightmare to drill. So in the end, you go, okay, I'm going to bite the bullet and I'm going to pay for a more expensive drilling technique like a diamond hole, but at least I know that I'm going to get to where I want to get. So is it you know, you take you use a cheaper technique, but you take the risk that you're not going to complete the hole. As it turned out, that RC hole cost us as much as if we'd done it with diamond, but we didn't get to test the target. So they're some of the non-technical things, you know, you say about stopping a discovery, but that's really frustrating, because then it's like, you know, you don't know what you're doing, or the target's no good. So no, the target's still there.
Yeah, but everyone's always an expert.
You know, you live on die on that drill hole. I can't remember how much we went down on the back of that, but it's like, we haven't tested it.
Yeah.
We haven't tested it.
In light of that, a really interesting one I want to post it. I was going to give you some sections examples, but I thought, when people look at a section, you know, and you see this in a lot of results. So when you see, let's say, a discovery like Hemi, or maybe even your Andy Well days, and you see that line of section, you go, wow, yeah, you know, 40 meters at this, or 30 meters, you're going, yeah, well, this is a discovery.
Yeah.
And so when you see that 5 meters at 2 grams, you know, substandard grade, not great grades, but not low grade. How can you sort of look at that and go, well, and make a judgment call where they are?
Yeah.
You know, not taking to the big 50 meters at this or whatever.
Yeah. So I guess a couple of things I would look at. I would look at the depth of that intersection, how far it is below the surface. You know, is it 20 meters below the surface, or is it 420 meters below the surface, right? So there's an economic factor there. You know, with the current gold price, you can push the grade down a lot more than you could, say, 10, 20 years ago. You know, as a rule of thumb, you probably want somewhere about 50 gram meters is sort of a good
You want to explain
benchmark.
what that actually...
So 50 gram meters. So, you know, if you had 10 meters at 5, you multiply the 10 by the 5, and that's 50 gram meters. That's like the grade width of the intersection. So, you know, you probably get a bit lower than that these days at the current gold price. But I would want to see, that sort of intersection, 40 to 50 gram meters, but then I would want to see it on consecutive sections. You know, continuity between sections. Yeah. And also you've got to look then at what the distance is between those sections. You know, if you're drilling down to sort of less than maybe 25 metres between sections, you're looking at a pretty short strike length.
Yeah.
But that's what I'd start looking at. I'd look at the depth below surface that the intersection starts, and then I'd look to see what the continuity is like between sections to work out whether you can draw a box around it. Yeah. And then work out a grade and volume and stuff like that. So the other thing you got to be careful of too is supergene gold. Like, you know, like you can get really high supergene gold numbers, especially in the shallow parts. And typically you get a kick sort of at not really contact, but at the boundary between the sort of saprolite and the bedrock as a result of water and stuff. So you can quite often get, 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 grams on maybe a metre or two of supergene, but then nothing below it. And we've seen that at Gidgee, right? So you've got to be careful sometimes when you look at assays, and you might see a number that's reported as, 20 metres at 5, but then if they've done the right thing and actually reported the individual assays, you might see that 20 metres at 5 is actually one sample with a high supergene gold number, and it's been smeared out intentionally or not intentionally over a wider interval to make it look better than it is.
Yeah.
So I'd just be careful of that too, especially in those sort of shallow bits. When it's in hard bedrock, you don't see that, but when it's shallow, you just got to be careful of that as well.
Yeah, because a lot of times when people put an announcement out and they said, oh yeah, we're really happy with this, but then when I look at it, I'm going, okay, I'll be happy if I was there, but it doesn't kind of tell the story as well. And a lot of time you get these little small pots and small interceptions, and it doesn't give you that strike length, which then is a problem too, because then you have this isolation issue, right?
Yeah. It's you got to look at the drill section spacing, and then the drill section spacing, the hole spacing, the hole spacing on the section, and so on a section where you might have, several holes in what we call a fence, do they join up, or is it just one hole by itself and nothing either side? And then in 3 dimensions, does it show continuity, or is it just one section?
Right.
And that. The ASX announcement should have enough information for you to look at that. If it doesn't, then you've got to ask questions.
All right. Look, we covered a lot of stuff, and I think the whole idea is to really get an insight into how you think, and maybe we can close up. How do you see this mineral? That sector we're in, that mineral exploration small cap sector now. And going forward, obviously, you got, and I kind of think like, you got nickels out favour, you got copper that's supposed to be going gung ho, but it's kind of like, neither here nor there at this point in time. You got the base metals are just base metals.
Yeah, gold's
flavour.
Crazy.
Yeah, going crazy.
But the gold producer's doing well, but it's not filtering down to the developers or the explorers, which is very frustrating.
So, kind of the question, right? What should we be exploring? Because Rio Tinto's dead, and no IBM. If you look at the Lumi thing, it's like, mate, they got so much there. Is it worth finding another one?
Yeah. Well, I mean, good projects are always good projects, and I'll talk about nickel a bit more in a minute. But what's frustrating is the last couple of years has just seen this sort of, there's no patience. There's no patience on the behalf of like brokers or retail shareholders. And my experience is that it seemed like every time I went and saw a broker in Perth, they were telling me to look for a different commodity.
Yeah.
And then the next time you go back, they're like telling you look for another one. You're going, hang on, but what about the one you wanted me to look for last month? Oh no, that's no good now. And I'm like, you can't run exploration like that. Some of these projects take years, decades to actually develop the ideas. So I find that very frustrating. You got to stick to your guns, but it's hard to stick to your guns if you're not having the immediate success as well, because of that lack of patience.
That's the biggest problem, I think.
It's like, and you could name all the boom and busts that I've been through in the last 30 years. I think every commodity's had about 3. Your graphites and uraniums and your rare earths and your nickels and your coppers, and they all sort of do this. And it's like you got to, the timing's got to be right at the right time, or else you lose out. But like nickel is an interesting one, because we're focused on our nickel project at the moment, you know, it's something that I've been following for most of my career, actually. You know, we're up on what we call the Bangor. It's the bit between the Pilbara and the Yilgarn. It's the Craton margin between those two big blocks, and we're looking for Norilsk style nickel copper PGEs, right? So there's basically three types of nickel deposits. There's your laterites, which, you know, is the stuff that comes out of Indonesia and in the old days came out of New Caledonia and those places. Obviously there's a lot of talk about them at the moment. And then there's basically your two sulphide types. There's your komatiites, so that's, you know, Leinster, Mount Keith, Kambalda. You know, pretty small, but high grade and can be valuable, but quite small. And then there's what we call the mafic intrusion hosted deposits. These are the giants. These are Voisey Bay, Jinchuan, Nebo Babel in the West Musgraves, Nova, and the big mother of them all is Norilsk in Siberia. And Norilsk is huge. Norilsk is not only the biggest nickel deposit in the world, it's actually one of the biggest and most valuable metal deposits in the world, right? And that's what we're looking for in the Bangor. Now this is our super high risk, super high reward thing. Those things are very valuable. You know, Nebo Babel and I think Nova is the only nickel deposit making money in Australia at the moment, and that is important to realise that. This is this mafic intrusion hosted style of mineralisation, and they make money at pretty much any nickel price. They're always at the bottom of the cost curve, and in fact they have negative costs because they have credits from copper and cobalt and PGEs and stuff as well, right? So that's what we're looking for up there. Basically the basic model is you have mafic magma, comes up a big fault, that's your plumbing system. It goes through some sort of rock type that's got sulphur in it. In our case, it's like pyritic siltstones and evaporites and stuff in the Bangor Basin. In Voisey Bay and at Nova, it goes through other rocks that have got sulphur in them. But the idea is that you've got nickel and copper and PGEs at low levels in our case, a dolerite, and then it mixes with the sediments that have got sulphur, and the nickel and copper and PGEs and the sulphur get together and then drop out as sulphides. So, you know, it's a high risk play, but all the ingredients are there. It's not just me that says that. GSWA say that there should be Norilsk style deposits there. Geoscience Australia had it as one of their key targets when they did their nickel atlas, which is the atlas that Chalice used to find Julimar. And CSIRO have said there should be a Norilsk there as well. The key is that the dolerites that we're looking at, they're part of this big thing called the Warrakurna Large Igneous Province, which is like the Siberian traps where Norilsk is. It's this humongous province that runs from like central Australia right out to Onslow. And those dolerites, they're called the Kolkatharra dolerites, they're the same age as Nebo Babel. They're the same age as the Giles complex, which hosts Nebo Babel. So we're sort of on the end of this province. And no one has looked for, I won't say no one, a couple of people have been out there and taken a few samples, but no one has drilled or done any systematic exploration for that style of deposit in the Bangor. So we're just about to get out there in the next couple of weeks. We're going to drill our first drill program out there. It's taken basically about 4 years to get to this point. We've got EIS funding from the WA government because it's basically their idea, a lot of their data that we've used. So it's going to be pretty interesting, you know. Like I'm really excited, but I'm also pretty nervous about it because I know that it's such a high risk thing. But all the ingredients are there. We just need a bit of luck, you know.
Yep, that's mineral exploration, full stop.
Yeah, all the ingredients there. It's a good idea. People think that it should be there. We've done the work to get us to the drill pad now. We've done, airborne EM, which showed up a whole heap of conductors. We've done ground EM, which confirmed those conductors. We've done a bit of lithogeochemistry, which means basically taking rock chip samples and analysing them, then looking at different patterns and comparing them with published information, and that looks promising. The key that's missing at the moment is nickel or copper sulfides. Okay. That's what's missing. If we find nickel or copper sulfides, proves the concept. That's like the missing piece of the puzzle at the moment. So
okay,
yeah, so we'll see. Give us a few weeks.
Alan, thank you. Fantastic conversation. I think you know, look, anybody who has thoughts of becoming a mineral explorationist should you know, think about all those things that you're talking about, because it's so true. I remember going to undergrad and all I wanted was a piece of paper that says you can go find work. I never thought about what it meant.
Yeah.
But I think me and undergrad and me today, two different species, because I'm like a sponge now, whereas before it was like, you know, I would walk out of a lecture and go, geez, what happened there? 45 minutes of my life gone.
Yeah, yeah.
But look, Alan.
So I'll just say one thing. So I went to university and I learnt geology, but I learnt to be a geologist at Western Mining. That's what I say to people.
Yeah.
Like, I really, that was uni was great, and I'm probably like you, or petrology. I'm like, oh, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
But then when I actually was doing it every day and working with fantastic people, that's where I learnt to be a geologist. And that's where that passion came from.
Yeah, I think a lot of people say the same thing. Western Mining was probably the last, or the best thing that for the likes of yourself, you know, where a lot of people that have been through that school of work with Western Mining has pretty much like the same thing. So, look, again, thank you. Again, you know, as usual, Coffee Samso. Coffee goes with you when you leave. But thank you again. Till next time.
All right. Thanks. Cheers. Thank you.